Hello and welcome to the CASTcast. This is the podcast for the Association for Software Testing, and more specifically, for the Conference for the Association for Software Testing, otherwise known as CAST. I'm Michael Larson.
And I'm Claire Ma.
And today we are joined by Simon Peter Schrijver. Hello, Simon.
Hello, Michael. Hello, Claire. How are you? It's good to be on the show.
Well.
We are good, and thank you very much for joining us today. So, Simon, we like to give our guests a chance to introduce themselves, tell us a little bit about their origin story, how they got to where they are, and, most importantly, brings them to CAST, and in your case, speaking at CAST. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Okay, Simon. Middle name is Peter. Simon is on the passport. Peter is how people call me in the Netherlands. But I go with both names, but internationally I always use Simon. I'm a tester for more than 20 years already, 2 decades. Time flies when you're fun. I started my testing career at Lucent Technologies, or previously known as AT&T Network Systems International. Got resigned due to reorganizations during the internet bubble. I did some small assignments, and in 2005 I became independent. Since then I have a really big fun, travel around the world, because the money is what is paid by to me for the assignments I do is quite good. I have the opportunity to go to conferences, which I think is necessary as you are an independent, to get up to speed with your knowledge and, of course, the networking. So that's why I also got introduced to the Association of Software Testing and found out about CAST. I think it's one of my favorite conference. At this moment, I'm a mobile app tester at a big national bank, one of the 4 big banks here in the Netherlands. I used to be a test manager, but not into the management thing, because I always tell it as it is. Upper managers don't like what I say. It's a bit confronting for them, so I dropped back to testing, and luckily I found a job in mobile app testing, which is a new area to work in, and it's quite fun. I'm working here with colleagues who could be my kid. It's more than a 25-year age difference, so that's really fun to have multiple generations working together with each other.
I know that feeling very well. I'm also a 25 plus year veteran, and I do know what it feels like working with a team where I'm like, I could be your dad. So it is cool, though. It is a great feeling to realize, hey, we've been around the block a few times, so we've seen a thing or two. And seeing a thing or two, of course. So your session is session-based testing in an Agile project. Sessions that I do during a sprint. For those who are not familiar with session-based testing or what it is, tell us a bit about it.
Well, do we need to start with Agile? Do people know what sprints are? I would think so.
That's a very good point. Yes, just in case you don't happen to know what Agile is, let's go there.
Agile is for me a word which is saying get things done quickly in an iterative way with a small team and with a sprint. Don't ask me what the real explanation is of Agile. For me, it's a 2-week sprint where I do my work as a tester. What I'm going to talk about is what I'm doing in those 2 weeks. In the beginning, when we finished the sprint planning, so the sprint planning has been done. First story, user story is selected, and the developer starts, and then the tester has to wait. That's most of the time the situation I encounter. Instead of sit and wait, I start all my preparations because I know the content of the sprint, I know the user stories. So I do my preparation based on session-based testing. And session-based testing with a time bound, say 90 minutes, can be 60, can be 120. Session-based testing originates from James and John Buck somewhere in 2000. And at a certain moment, they also introduced 6 types of session reports, which are based on a phase in the development cycle. Start first with the intake, then the survey, and then you do the setup, you do the analysis, the deep coverage, and the closure session. I'm going to discuss all 6 sessions during my presentation.
Is it safe to assume that when you say testing here that you're talking about exploratory testing and not automation, or does automation figure into this work?
It is based on exploratory tests, but automation is sidely involved. And I will go into the details and talk about the deep coverage report, because there we do the actual testing. Session-based testing is about note-taking. So you observe, and what you see is what you write down, and you can do it in different fashions. And one of them can be in Gherkin-style language, which can be used for automation if you do a BDD kind of approach.
What I think is interesting here is that You're talking about multiple different session types that you do, and some of which is the fact that when you are doing various session-based testing approaches, or also if you are part of a sprint and you're taking on a story, I think for many people it's a revelation that you don't necessarily have to wait until all of the code is in place to be able to do your testing. For me personally, I find one of the most helpful things to do is, and I'm guessing you might be going into this, and if I'm stealing your thunder, I apologize. The idea is that one of the first things that you can do on the testing side of things is look at your environment and think, what in regards to this story is going to change for this story to be implemented? What will I need to have in my environment ready? Which means if you know that you're going to be doing a lot of setup and teardown for your testing purposes, at least you know you start there. And you can take a look and say, what are the repetitive tasks I know I'm going to be faced with? Maybe there's some things I can do to lessen the tedium of having to do those setup and teardown spaces. Now, whether you call that automation or you call it tooling or you by whatever name you want to look at it, that's a good way for everybody to get started. You can also have questions about what does the story entail? What risks do we have to consider for the story? What peripheral pieces do we need to be able to look at? And all of those things can, if you will, keep us busy while we're going through and getting a story ready to where we can actually test the feature that is under development. Does that sound like a fair assessment?
Yeah, because what you now just explained is covered in the first 4 session reports. Because the intake session report, you look what your mission is, in this case, a user story or multiple user stories. So I will write down what I have on my plate to test. So these are the user stories I will work on. So I know my boundary, that's what I'm going to do. The next session report, that's the survey. I'm going to learn about what needs to be done in this user story, what kind of stuff I'm going to do. So I collect the information to learn what the user story is about. I write down what are my thoughts, because I make from a user story sort of a survey for myself in my own words. And then I end up in the setup of my environment, the setup session report, where I talk about my testing infrastructure. Specific for mobile, we have a backend available where all stuff is residing. For mobile, I mentioned which devices we have in scope, which operating systems we have in scope, and that sort of stuff, which combinations are useful. I'm coming to the 4th session in my preparation, that's the analysis session report. And there is getting the ideas for the deep coverage. That's getting ideas for the real testing. And there I do the risk assessments.
So I'm curious about that. In your abstract, it says you're defining test cases. So is that part of your deep coverage analysis?
Yeah, test cases, test IDs. Probably I should mention test IDs because I don't create test cases in a specific scripted way. I just going to find out where my application has been changed, where new things are added to the application, because those areas are areas of interest because things are not as before. I also investigate if those changes or new things are in the main flow of the application or say in alternative flows. So that gives me an indication of where are the risky areas. So I focus on that part with my testing, some ideas, what I want to do. And then I start with the deep coverage, which is the real testing work. And there I have things like charges, which I then define based on my test ideas. And just start testing while I execute my steps on the device, try to get in place by writing them down or just do a few quick things and then try to remember it, of course. Gradually start testing the user story and see how the application is behaving or how the backend interaction is going on, if I have it available, and that sort of stuff. And then try to see what happens. And if I see areas of interest during my tests, I will go to deeper in that. So I then sort of reassess the situation based on the new knowledge I have. And then test deeper and always take notes.
Fantastic. Well, it sounds to me like any good mystery writer, we don't want to necessarily know the whodunit before the end of it, and that means that if you would like to know a little bit more about Simon's talk, well, we of course encourage you to go to www.associationforsoftwaretesting.org, click on the CAST 2017 link, and sign up if you haven't already done so. And if you have already done so and you're still looking for which talks you want to consider, we strongly suggest you take a look at Simon's talk. And with that, we are going to say thank you for joining us. And to everybody who is listening, thank you again for joining us as well. And we look forward to talking to you soon, once again, on the CASTcast. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Claire.